Star Wars 7x7 episode 2233. It turns out that one of the tales that you could possibly take most literally in Dark Legends actually ends up building upon a story from Star Wars Myths and Fables. Punch it. Hey Rebel Rouser, I'm Alan Voivod, and this is Star Wars 7x7, your daily dose of Star Wars joy. And thank you so much for joining me for it. So, this is going to be the last episode where we talk about Dark Legends, the new book of scary stories and ghostly tales from George Mann, who is the writer of Star Wars Myths and Fables, and also with artwork again by Grant Griffin. Gorgeous artwork, absolutely beautiful artwork. So, here's the thing, I got to thinking about this as being remarkable because of the conversations that we were having about the Dr. Aphra audio drama, actually, and Sarah Kuhn expanding on the backstory between Aphra and Son of Staros, and how there's just a little hint of their story in the original source material, and the audio drama just incredibly beautifully opens that up and gives us a ton of rich detail and backstory, and really ends up making the whole story when we get into the actual telling of things, and it adds a whole layer of emotional depth and drama to it even when you go back and read the source material. Anyway, so as I was thinking about stories within stories and the opportunities to fill those out, well, that's what we get with this Myths and Fables and Dark Legend situation, because there isn't anything else, at least, that jumped out at me where I could link the two books, but there is a tale of a Sith Lord by the name of Darth Caldoth, and he takes a Twi'lek apprentice named Ry Nymbis, and their story is told in Myths and Fables. Specifically, it's told as sort of a cautionary tale about Ry Nymbis, who is not a very good kid, and the parents sense something is wrong with him, and Darth Caldoth happens upon him, and he's like, yeah, I can handle this kid, and the parents are like, no, I don't know, but, he's definitely got something wrong with him, and so, yeah, go ahead, go, take him. And it's not necessarily fun for Ry, as he is, tortured the way that Sith Lords do when they're training apprentices and whatnot, and, yeah, all sorts of bad things happen to Ry. And I suppose I should say that this is spoilery for both Myths and Fables and Dark Legends, but it's not going to spoil it outright. It's not going to blow the whole tale up on you or anything like that, or the whole tales, plural. So Gaze of Stone is the tale from Myths and Fables that I'm talking about, and you find out what ultimately happens with Caldoth and Ry Nymbis. And the funny thing is that that's just part of the story. And so Dark Legends actually expands upon that story and gives you from a certain point of view moment about how Darth Caldoth encountered Ry Nymbis. And it turns out it has to do with the Night Sisters. The Night Sisters we met in the Clone Wars cartoon series. And there's a thing about how Sith Lords are all about immortality, right? I think so many tales of Sith Lords have to do with them trying to find the secret to eternal life. And Night Sisters apparently mummify their dead sisters and have rituals where their spirits can come back to assist them, and so Caldoth stole one of these mummified pods, which the Night Sisters viewed as an act of war, and so they have, a very long, patient history for revenge. They don't have to get you right away, but they intend to get you, and it's just a matter of when. So there's a story in the Dark Legends book called The Gilded Cage, which talks about Caldoth and the Night Sisters, and about how they are going to try to exact revenge on him. And one of the ways that they think it's going to happen is by them looking into the future and seeing the possibility that this character, Ry Nymbis, could actually turn on Caldoth and potentially kill him. And so they're the ones who actually manage to get Caldoth to realize the existence of Ry Nymbis and kind of make it so that they end up crossing paths eventually. And if you want to find out how that turns out, like I said, I'm not going to spoil things for you, but do check out the Gaze of Stone story in Myths and Legends, or Myths and Fables, excuse me, and then check out The Gilded Cage in Dark Legends for the backstory about how Caldoth and Ry Nymbis came together, which is part of a much larger story. And as far as those two stories go and how literally we can take them, I'm going to address that in a second. I do just want to give a shout out to our friends at Audible and say that you can get a free download and a free 30-day trial at sw7x7.com/audible. Again, that's sw7x7.com/audible. And if you decide to subscribe to the service by going through that link, then that gets us a little bit of referral income that helps keep the lights on and the cameras rolling and all that fun stuff. So thank you for considering it. So I think that these two stories are probably two of the most literal ones. In other words, it's not necessarily a fable or a legend, but that it might have actually really worked out the way that they told those stories in the actual canon timeline. I think you can contrast that to stories where you don't necessarily know where in the timeline they take place. Like in Myths and Fables, there's a story about a wanderer and a dark wraith, and the dark wraith sort of looks like Darth Vader, but it's really hard to get a bead on whether it is. There's a story in Myths and Fables that talks about a guy who's sort of a wizard that was interacting with the Tusken Raiders on Tatooine. And so, yeah, even though that character is not named, there are enough context clues for us to think, oh, that must be related to Obi-Wan Kenobi somehow. But even though these two stories, The Gilded Cage in Dark Legends and Gaze of Stone in Myths and Fables, even though they don't take place in a timeline or with characters that we recognize, well, there's certainly enough detail about those stories that it really does come across as not just a scary story that you would tell to kids in the Star Wars universe or galaxy far, far away at night, but stories that may well have actually happened. And so I'd love to hear if you feel like there are some stories that are more literal than others in either of those two books. Just drop me a comment wherever you catch this episode or at home base at sw7x7.com. And that is going to do it for today's episode of the show. Thank you so much for joining me for it as always, and may the Force be with you wherever in the world you may be.
Star Wars 7x7 is not endorsed or sponsored yet by Lucasfilm Limited, Disney, or 20th Century Fox, and is intended for entertainment and information purposes only. Star Wars, the Star Wars logo, all names and pictures of Star Wars characters, vehicles, and any other Star Wars-related items are registered trademarks and/or copyrights of Lucasfilm Limited or their respective trademark and copyright holders. May the Force be with them. All original content is copyright 2020 by Star Wars 7x7. We hope you love it.